It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris.
And my name is Mike.
And welcome to the official Superhero Slate review of Marvel's The Marvels.
Yeah, you know what? we're live streaming this.
Yes.
You know, it's chilly here in the home here in Los Angeles, which is very odd because it gets very cool.
Chilly for you, like evenings. Low 80s?
I'm kidding. Well, it gets very cool in the evenings this time of year, but it can still get really hot outside. So it's literally in the 80s outside. And our air conditioner hasn't run even for a second the entire day, and it's like below 70 degrees in the home. It's like it's a very odd feeling. You know, you got the fall vibes running because Halloween's over, Thanksgiving's on the way.
Christmas decorations are in full force everywhere.
Yes,
you go.
I just feel like I could put on like a big old blanket and just talk about the Marvels. You know,
that sounds great. As we just talked, I've been gone all weekend. I drove. About 3.5 hour trip back, about fell asleep getting ready for the show, and then now I'm here ready for the shows. Because we got two. We have obviously we have a review here for I want to say Captain Marvel 2. It's not Captain Marvel 2. It's The Marvels, and that it's a disservice because the movie is larger than Captain Marvel. But like it's just so easier to say Captain Marvel 2 for some reason because when you try to explain this to normal people, and I'm going to talk about normal people later in this episode.
We are not
the average people for this. Trying to say the Marvels, it's very confusing. So it is the Marvels. We both saw it on Thursday night. Is that right? Because I went Thursday night, and then you were much. I think I was out of mine by the time you were going into yours because I was giving you the post credit scene rundown. Beforehand.
Just a heads up, as Chris told me, no spoilers yet, obviously, but there is only one post-credit scene.
Yeah, it's more of a mid-credits.
But then, like, who's this PSA for? Like, you're listening to this now. Well, I guess we'll get into the box office in a moment. So there is a high probability that you didn't go see this movie, and maybe you just want to hear us talk about it and you don't care about spoilers.
Yeah, it's very true. So there is one mid-credit scene for this. If you do go, you can also buy it's not Captain Marvel, it's the Marvels themed popcorn vessels, Mike, that I sent over to you because I picked one up. I didn't know they had one. It's actually a really, really nice one.
You sent me a picture. It's like that. Is it just like a 3-dimensional form of the crest that appears on her?
It's a mixture of hers, Captain Rainbow's and Miss Marvel's logos together, right, forming that bigger icon. But yes,
because I saw the popcorn bucket in its 3-dimensional state when you sent me a picture of it, and I was like, oh, is this like the MacGuffin of the movie? Is there like some sort of diamond crystal shard that they have to get?
No, it's their logos, and it's a see-through blue, and then it lights up on the bottom, so it's got a whole base. It actually sits like it's fairly large. We actually had to readjust our shelves, like we have the IKEA shelves, like those little things you put in to adjust your shelves. We had to raise it up one because it wouldn't fit on any of our shelves that we had spaced out.
Accommodate the popcorn bucket.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we collect. Normally if it was just a regular bucket, I probably wouldn't have got it. But I do want to say they do like to go out on these vessels, and I'm very, very thrilled with this one. So that was nice.
Ooh, I like that. We're calling it vessels.
That's what it says on my receipt. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. Like they're acknowledging it's not a popcorn bucket, and also kudos to the movie theaters for not requiring you to put your popcorn that comes with it in the actual vessel. They're like, it comes with a large popcorn. Do you want it in that or on the side? I'm like, I will take it on the side, please. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have a striking feeling that the volume is not equal to what you would have got.
It'd be a nightmare to clean these things, man. Like I can't imagine. And they were like, dripping butter in it, and you got to go into this little hole that you can barely get your hand in to clean the butter out of it later. I'm like, ain't no way.
Like, it's all angles too on the inside of that thing. Like there's no smooth. Like you gotta hopefully you have a partner with like tiny hands. Get in there, get all those crevices.
Yeah, maybe there's something on Amazon I can put on my Christmas wish list. And
there's always something on it. That is the gift and the curse of having access to 2-day shipping
of everything online all at once. So I don't know how to break this down, Mike. So I think the first thing we get into is the box office, the numbers, if you will, which I actually have the dash numbers pulled up for this just to confirm. Domestically, it is coming in very, very low at 47 million this weekend.
Yeah, I think depending on how you do your charts and do the math, this is the worst opening weekend domestically for a Marvel movie, or is it second? I feel like I've heard it.
I think
either way. Like
it's second or third. I think the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk, and the first Ant-Man have come up in those conversations.
Yes,
depending
which
on what you're looking at.
Like, and I know when historically when people do numbers comparisons, like just in Hollywood, it's kind of just more about the image and just like the fun of tracking the news. But like if you really dug into like the inflation numbers, it would easily be like last place, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, obviously, inflation is not slowing down, Mike. So thank you for reminding us of the horrors outside our front doors.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know what your movie theater looked like because I know we are in totally different media markets, but I was out here at a movie theater in Los Angeles on opening night on a Thursday, 7:50 p.m., like prime movie time. Like if I was seeing an Avengers movie for sure, which been a little while since we've had one.
Yeah. Unfair comparison, but go on.
Yes, obviously unfair comparison. But even if you compare it to the first Captain Marvel, like that movie, I believe opened 7th opening weekend.
That's another billion-dollar franchise. A little unfair.
Yes.
I'd say like for this year, I'm doing Ant-Man Quantumania for comparisons. I think because I to me, just looking at everything, Ant-Man comes with it, but it was like. I feel it's comparable. Like, how did your Ant-Man theater look like compared to this? Do you remember?
My Ant-Man theater had more. But another anecdotal evidence was I forgot about getting my tickets for the Marvels. And I was just probably in the bathroom scrolling on TikTok, probably shooting you text messages as well. Sorry to pierce the veil for you there, Chris, of where some of these
I know where these are coming from. You don't have I already know.
I was just like, oh, I didn't get my Captain Marvel tickets, and I was late to the poll on it, and I open up the seat map, and I'm like, ooh, this is not looking good. I thought it was going to be a tough seat selection for me on this one.
And there's always going to be a big asterisk on this, right? Because the actor strike, which is tentatively over as of this week, has prohibited most of any marketing other than using the cat Goose, right? Even the big orb in Vegas has Goose because they could not get any actors to film anything or do anything promotional for this movie for the past how long? 6 months, almost 5-6 months. So there will always be this big asterisk. Was marketing shorted? How much of that? I've read these reports of 25-30% of ticket sales can be attributed back to marketing with the actors, like press junkets, reminders, getting the people in front of like news stations, right? Your morning news channels, whatever they do, late night news channel, whatever you're watching. None of these actors could get on it, could do anything to market this movie. So where we were left with, I mean, even a last minute trailer this week that I told you, I don't know if you ever got a chance to go back and watch that one, which I felt was actually probably the best trailer, and they probably should have led with that a little more.
More of a hype-filled trailer. I mean, I feel like weirdly, I don't usually do this, but I'm gonna put a little faith in humanity here and say what is happening here is not the vocal minority that we heard about the first time the Marvels came around, because obviously it didn't make a difference. That was a $1 billion film worldwide once it finished wrapping up. It seems like the way this one's starting, it might not get there. I mean,
no.
I mean, I'm just doing basic math here. You almost always get the lion's share of your money in that first opening weekend, right? I think honestly, and this is like a bigger conversation that we've kind of just been touching on in our weekly news episodes. So hint, hint, wink, wink. You should be subscribed and listening every week. So as we dive deeper into this, I just think that as of right now, like Marvel just does not have a unique selling proposition, right? When we were building up to things like Infinity War and Endgame, it was like the first time for all of these things, right? The first, even when you got Age of Ultron, it was the first Avengers sequel, right? And you're building to something grander and grander. And now that Endgame is over, we have just not been served anything that is as compelling as, I would say, like Thanos. If you have to have like a
Well,
specific.
there's been no culmination, right? Like,
Yeah,
like, and even though Marvel was like, or Disney, whoever told them was like, you need to save your Avengers movies. Obviously, that's not worked out. Like saving the culmination is not getting the returns now that you need to, that you thought it would pay off later. And
there's just no drive
so
to get to the theater.
I will tell you, normally, my wife has a coworker who we always invite to these. She loves the Marvel stuff, right? Her husband does not care for it, and she's got 2 girls, so she'll take those opportunities to come out with these movies with us. She watched Guardians with us. I believe she watched Ant-Man. We asked her, and she said she was not going to go to this one. And I was like, she's like, but keep me in mind for Deadpool. I'm like, okay, may I ask why? And she's like, to be completely honest, it is the holiday season and money is tighter. So she's like, they're like, we are saving more for the holidays than spending, and we know it's just her, but like, than spending extraneous money right now in the economy. She's like, not to, again, point at inflation and, the cost of living and all these other, crises, but she's like, she was pretty much like, she's like, it's the holiday season and we are cutting back on extra expenditures for the holidays kind of thing.
I think that's fair too. And even in an environment where all of that stuff still exists, that just means your piece of entertainment has to be even more competitive and even more compelling. It has to have that X factor, because that's what all of these Marvel movies require, right? A big return at the box office, because they're big investment films. They put a lot of money into these. So all of the movies previously, well, most of the money previously had like I was saying, that unique X factor that's really driving you. Like, what's going to be the end credit scene on this one that gets, my senses tingling? What's going to be like the big surprise, like, in the first act of the film? What's going to be this compelling villain that we've never seen before on the screen? Like, oh my God, like I've never seen like, a live action, like, trying to think of back, like I've never seen Winter Soldier properly on screen before. That's crazy. Oh wow, Red Skull. Like, now if you're like adapting these lesser known characters, like, this kind of goes to the fact that, like, obviously when they pivot and transition to things like Fantastic Four or X-Men, those are going to be a little bit easier to win over, right?
Well, they've got history. They got to establish things. I will say. So I was going to say the other part of this was I met up with another friend today who's got a kid. Maybe he's like 10 years old, maybe 11. Or, recently he's very excited to go to this kind of thing. He was going to go, and then I met and talked to him, and my friend, his dad was like, I'm not really feeling it today. I don't normally leave the house on Sundays. He travels for work throughout the week. He's like, it'll probably be on Disney Plus pretty soon, right? I'm like, that's a fair thing. Everyone has been trained to accept or expect things to be on Disney Plus now, in like within a month, right? Or so. Yeah. Because he was going to go to, they were like out of town. It was like an hour and a half away from his home, and they were going to go to the theater and then that was the response. I'm like, I never really thought what other people, you just don't know when things come to Disney Plus anymore.
Yeah, and normally I think sometimes people wouldn't dare wait that long and to miss like the next big reveal or the next big thing. So I think that's part of it too. Like, we're just obviously in a totally different media climate than we were just a couple of years ago.
And I would say Captain Marvel 1, obviously was set in the 90s. It wasn't going to really reveal anything either. Kind of going forward, Guardians had some.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't Captain Marvel the movie just before Infinity War? Or was it the one in between Infinity
There was one.
War?
There was one of 2 in between. That and Ant-Man. Ant-Man 2 were in between. So they had the benefit of riding the wave between 2 Avengers movies. And obviously, both of those movies did not do very well this year. At the end of the day,
I think the most important thing to note right now is we've been talking about like basically butts and seats in the box office expectation and just Marvel in general, but we haven't even brought up once like the quality of the movie, whether we liked it or not. So I think that goes to say something that it doesn't even necessarily matter at this point in time how great or poor any particular Marvel movie is you have to solve all of these other problems first, and then make the movie You
Yeah.
know,
Well,
right? So
you make a movie as good or as bad as you want, and then you can accidentally get again butts in seats if it's bad, right? Or word of mouth and make it good. But like there are. I mean, not saying quality overall this year. This year has been an ebb and flow of quality, right, Mike? If we look at just movies, the last movie Marvel had, great movie. $800 and something million. Obviously, on point with Guardians 3. If you look at shows, we only have Secret Invasion and Loki, I believe, this year. If my math is right, and Secret Invasion. Boy, what a kick in the nuts that was. And then Loki finished. We'll talk on our main show about Loki in that. But, as we've mentioned on the show, kind of firing on all cylinders, right?
Yeah.
When it launched. So we're in an ebb and flow of content and quality. And it's very interesting, right? A lot of different things going on.
So speaking of ebb and flow, Chris, would we like to throw up the spoiler warning tag and flow us into our
do we
review?
Want to do we want to give just a quick recommend not recommend before we go into this and discuss it, so people who maybe don't want spoilers want to know if we liked it or not before we get in there?
Oh yeah, that's right. No, take down the spoiler.
There's no spoiler warnings
we're
yet.
Not spoiling anything yet.
It's just a weird way to talk about this movie because it is being affected by a lot of things and not necessarily what we're going to talk about the quality. So go ahead.
Let me pick up my my flurkin. Let me shoot its tentacles at the spoiler light, which I put up way too soon. And
he's antsy. He wants to talk about this movie so bad, guys. So you want to go ahead first? You want me to go first? How are you feeling here today?
I'll go ahead and jump into it. I went in with pretty low expectations, not necessarily because it was Captain Marvel, even though I wouldn't say I was particularly compelled by her first film. But also just the current state of Marvel, and we'll talk about that more, I think, in our weekly news episode, because they got some delays coming up on the slate that I'd like to chat about. So I went in with low expectations, which I think helped overall. I was able to just kind of put my guard down, chill, lay back, and then just enjoy what I thought was a pretty pleasant movie. I don't think this is necessarily going to blow away Marvel tier lists, I don't think this is going to really upset the March Madness of the MCU. But I feel like this sits pretty in the middle of all of the Marvel movies I've seen, which is a pretty decent place to be overall.
Out of 35 movies, that's not too bad.
Yeah, that's not too bad. I mean, I thought the jokes were pretty solid, I think sometimes people tire of the Marvel humor, but I think when it's working, I'm having a good time. So that's what I'm looking forward to as well. I thought it's weird. Usually I'm not much of a special effects snob, but I feel like since special effects have been under the microscope for Marvel over the last couple films, I thought everything looked pretty good, which is great. I didn't see anything glaring that standed out that somebody's going to screenshot and then go rant on Twitter about.
I've got an asterisk for that, right? Because also, remember we talked about how this used to be where Ant-Man was this year, and Ant-Man was here, and they swapped them, and then that because all the VFX stuff now that they're unionizing, but obviously they took that time to heart to finish this, right? So,
yeah, who knows? Yeah, it could have been flopped. Maybe Ant-Man could have looked pretty, and this one could have been a little odd. But yeah, I had a good time. It was really, really, really nice, I have to say, to see Kamala Khan again. Ayman Vellani. Ayman Vellani. I was trying to get that right, and
absolutely.
I screwed up. But she is just absolutely a pleasant source and a scene stealer. I love her so much. After watching Loki and just having adoration for just what they're doing with the TVA and just loving Kamala Khan as a character, these are the things I'm really leaning into at Marvel right now because I'm loving them so much. So having her part of this trio, I just thought was really, really sweet. There's these awesome just kind of friendships that build between this teenager and these adults. And there's there's just a lot of nice feelings. It was just weird. I wasn't expecting to feel emotionally supported while I was watching this movie. Now I think there would be some ne'er-do-wells out there in the world that might say this is pandering girl power, and that's absolutely not the case. That just does not come up in any aspect of the way. And I also just finished watching that new South Park Panderverse special that's on Paramount Plus. That actually is really, really funny. And of course, Trey Parker and Matt Stone attack the kind of subject from a very unique angle. And I don't feel like any of that, any kind of like that toxic stuff really showed up in this movie at all. It was just good character moments. There's a lot of fun adventures. We go to different locations. The swapping of locations, which we get to see in the trailer, was kind of a unique storytelling device. I would say it gets a little complicated, and parts of the rules of how these things work don't make a lot of sense to me at times, but at least it kind of keeps the story going full steam ahead. If you have characters moving locations constantly across the galaxy or across the room, you're forced to move and progress the plot forward. So yeah, overall, I was pleasantly surprised. I wasn't knocked, off my feet, right? But I certainly wasn't expecting a low box office performance like we got. So I think that's where a lot of the incongruency is going to be. So hopefully we don't see a lot of Hollywood, hit pieces that are just like, oh, this is like superhero like fatigue, or nobody likes Captain Marvel or anything like that. This is a good movie, and I'm happy to say that this was Chris, I want to know what you think.
Yeah, I would say we're probably gonna be pretty on par with this throughout the review episode. I had a great time. I should say, Mike, to me, very early on, I felt the brevity of this. Like, I'm like, oh, this is moving. There's no lingering. There's no meandering, right? Because it runs at a brisk hour 45, one of the shortest Marvel movies as well. So it's very quick and instantly, like I think there's an opening scene that kind of sets up the MacGuffin, but it's not like a new MacGuffin, right? We'll talk about that in spoilers. But I was like, this feels like I just picked up a comic book and they're literally bringing it to life. Like, you're getting a couple panels of what's going on, who the villains are, who the characters are. Oh, we get a crossover in this issue of the book. They're going to some cool places, and then they kind of resolve it. So to me, this was like one of the bigger, like, hey, a comic book brought to life kind of story and visuals. And I think it owes it to that, briskness, the quickness of the episode. Or not episode, the show. And I would say, I agree with you. The actors, Brie Larson, Teyonah Parris, Iman Vellani, like, they really came together and like they really played off of each other, right? You had three different people. The characters had different interactions with each other, right? You have obviously Carol and Rambeau's history, right, from the first Captain Marvel movie, and then you have Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel being a fangirl, like, right, fangirling the entire time. But what I really appreciated about this one compared to, I would say, Spider-Man, right? You have Spider-Man and Tony Stark in this, is that Captain Marvel Carol did not like push away, Miss Marvel. Like, she, like, I acknowledge it. Yes, you like me, but we're also here doing a job kind of thing. So like, work with me, rather than like, hey, I'm just gonna, like, you're not good enough for the suit. You're not good enough for the powers or the name kind of deal, right? So I really appreciated that everyone was very supportive of each other in this movie, rather than having like a dour, like, we're internal arguing kind of the whole way through there, and that kind of built on it. There are some again interesting scenes. I obviously there are some cat moments in here, and as a cat owner, I love the cat moments, Mike. I thought they were hilarious, and we'll talk about some of those later. And overall, probably I would say not the strongest villain, but I see the similarities between her and Ronan, who was essentially her predecessor in the MCU, right? Both were our Kree leaders with the hammer. I wish they just had a little bit more, but I understand compared to Ronan, I actually understand Dar-Benn's motives and what she's trying to do. Even if it is a little much like the plot of Spaceballs, a little bit, from what I've heard. So overall, I had a really good time. Again, I think, it's not the best thing. I put it like a B, right? This is a really solid movie, really solid actors, really solid effects. And just, it's got good moments, it's got serious moments. And I think, honestly, like I said, the quickness, the shortness of it really was like, oh man, this feels like a really good, I guess, episode in the MCU. If you look at the MCU as a TV series, if you will. I do think the other thing I will say, if you've not seen Miss Marvel and if you've not seen WandaVision, those would help understand these characters a little bit more, right? Miss Marvel and Captain Rambeau, but they do a pretty quick job getting people up to speed in the movie. Like, hey, here's what they can do, and here's their relationships with each other. Let's go.
Yeah, they do a couple like literal flashbacks to footage from Captain Marvel. I don't believe I remember seeing anything from Miss Marvel.
No, they did not
in there at all. But I did watch a YouTube recap, like I love to do before I go to the theaters, of everything you need to remember before you go see the Marvels, and that was really, really helpful because it kind of helped bring me back to, just some of the little tidbits of information. Like I had totally forgotten about the whole like AI ruler of her home planet.
Yeah, the Supreme Intelligence.
Yeah, I had totally forgotten about that. So.
Which was the visual was retconned in this to be more comic book accurate, which was cool. So.
Oh yeah, well we'll talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think we both agree. You're pleasantly surprised. Not the best thing in the world. I would say it's better than Ant-Man this year. I enjoy this more than Ant-Man.
Yeah, there's more heart and story in this film than Ant-Man. Ant-Man just kind of felt like just like a long running joke throughout the film that they tried to hang a story on.
So I think, and I would say even the locations in this movie felt very unique and stand out. So they had unique things, kind of like a Star Wars planet does. Quantumania was just a big red blob. Like it's visual, I wouldn't say effects good or bad, but it had nothing to make that movie stand out visually that I can even remember. Can you?
Yeah,
exactly.
No.
And I would also say, Thor: Love and Thunder is a better than that because I think that movie didn't have enough focus on what it was trying to do. Despite it, it's got a pretty good story. The Hammer following him and being jealous was really weird in that one. So I think this is an improvement over even the Thor: Love and Thunder. So I think second best Marvel movie this year.
Yeah, so this is our basically our recommendation of go check this out. If you're one of those families that does like a Thanksgiving weekend, Black Friday movie watching type of thing, I think this would be fun. You might have to onboard some of the relatives, like Chris, like you were saying, if you're not too familiar. But I'd love to jump into spoilers so we can kind of talk about this.
I'm going to put the spoiler time code here. So if you have passed our time code, you're now in spoiler territory. And we cannot save you from this. However, I've seen a lot of articles just calling out several things in here, including the end credit scene, already. So I don't want to talk about that right away. I don't want the movie to be about the end credit scene, Mike. It should be more about the movie. But we will get to the end credit scene. So go on. What do you want to spoil, Mike? What do you want to?
Yeah, let's just dive in. My favorite single part about this movie is Kamala Khan, and I just love her involvement in it. I think this is one of the few times where I feel like we've seen a Disney Plus show do what it really wanted to do for our characters, is set them up, get them going, so when they're included in one of these films, you can really hit the ground running. We didn't really have to establish the rule sets and powers for Kamala Khan, her whole family dynamic. It was just there and ready to go. I forgot how much I loved her family and the dynamic.
Her mom is like too good at that role. I'm like, oh, you're so good at that role.
Yeah. So when when Kamala just starts nerding out, when she starts changing places and finally makes it back to her house, and she was just like, wait, Captain Marvel was here in my house. I was like, oh, this is so much fun. I love this.
And what's good about that is also they used the scene from the end of the Marvel or Miss Marvel, right? They actually integrated it into the movie where she zaps into her closet a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So they had some scenes before that, but that was nice to actually have that. Compared to WandaVision, I would say WandaVision's the other show that tried to pay off a character, but making her the villain wasn't really that character we saw in WandaVision. So I absolutely agree. I think Miss Marvel was a great thing to this, and also confirming that her powers are not Bengal related in this movie. She just wears the Bengal. They activated her mutant gene, or if you will, because she used the powers without the Bengal at the end of the movie.
Yeah, which this is all still confusing for me, and maybe we can broach it here in the spoilers at some point.
Yeah.
But outside of the character of Kamala, I also just was really happy to see some actual character development added to Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Like she had amnesia for almost the entirety of her film. She was essentially like a tank cameo in the other Avengers movies that she popped up in. So she had no character at all, which was also very strange because you have this, you have Kamala Khan who's in love with her. And I was like, oh, well, Kamala knows as much of Captain Marvel as the audience does, is just like some superhero on a screen. Like nobody knows anything about her personality yet.
And I would also say that that you mentioned the power swapping. The power swapping was a great way to nerf her being the strongest, like, right, being able to just blast things, because anytime two of them use their powers, she was teleported somewhere else, either on a different planet or swapped to where, you know, it could like do more bad than good in that situation. So the power entanglement actually worked in that favor to kind of keep her down a little bit, and she just didn't go through and just blow everything up on her own in one go.
And I liked how they at least attempted to, okay, we're going to have Captain Marvel. She's going to have one of the strongest power sets in the entire Marvel universe at this current moment. So what is the ramifications of that? It's just like that she can single-handedly kind of take down a whole planet. Now, that the whole scheme of it, like, I got it a little bit, right? I totally get how somebody coming in and destabilizing your government could cause a civil war. That wasn't beyond me, right?
Yep.
But then also they added on like the natural resources going away. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess I could imagine a civil war. Like they said, the civil war like made the it made the sky, like the air unbreathable. Okay, I could also see them that maybe affecting the water too, but I was like, but how did the sun go out? Like, how does Captain Marvel flying in and destroying a computer like destroy your sun? It just seemed very coincidental that all of these things were happening at the same time to this planet, where it felt like you didn't need all of these things happening. I wish there was more of an explanation of why the sun had to go out, besides her just having to reignite it.
Well, the Civil War, they attacked their own sun. That's what it was. Like causing the drought, like back in like, you know, the 90s. The 90s is when this happened, because the point where she destroyed the Supreme Intelligence was literally right immediately after her movie, right? Because she had on the helmet and the stuff. So it's been, and I think she said 30 years. So it's been 30 years. So I think the Civil War, and I think they might have even mentioned it, the Civil War, they took out their own sun. Like they were trying to hurt each other, because the Kree are a war-focused race of people. So
I mean, I would have. I think this is one of the few times where maybe show don't tell would have been really helpful. Of how are you messing up the sun? Like that is like a big thing that every person in the audience understands, the power and sheer scale of a sun. So like if you're gonna like say it's not working, like maybe try a little bit harder to let us know why.
And I will say I'm just gonna go ahead and bring one of the negative things about this. Despite the fact it's an hour 45, it feels like either Kevin Feige or another producer or the higher ups, the board of the people who make the decisions there, were like, chop a lot of this stuff out, because I feel like there's stuff missing in some of these scenes, and that's probably one of them.
Yeah, there was. I wish I would have to watch it for a second time to remember it, but in the first act of the film, I think maybe when they were all switching places, there was like an odd moment where like Kamala was just suddenly there, and I'm not saying like she just like she warped in, like it was just like, wait, but you weren't there and we didn't see the swap. So it was very discombobulating. There could have been a weird cut for sure,
because I felt it probably more during the singing planet scenes, because you know, I think a lot of people are going to get hung up on this on the internet, the singing planet scenes. I thought it was really fun and like interesting to do something where like they have to, their language is singing, and you know, they don't know anything else, unless you're bilingual, which I thought was really funny. But like the only Carol and the other dude did that, whatever her husband's name was on that planet. But like I feel like there was a scene where Kamala and Monica had to do it as well. Right, where everyone had to sing, and they never really did it. Like it was just kind of gone. Like it felt like it was setting that up, and then they just didn't do it because they had to literally get to the next scene where Dar-Benn arrived.
Yeah, I feel like the singing planet is a really good example of compare and contrast with Thor: Love and Thunder. I feel like with Thor: Love and Thunder, a singing planet would have worked like They show up, it's a gimmick for like 2 seconds, and then they're out of it. But it weirdly kind of felt supportive to the story going on of like, oh, I like to imagine that Captain Marvel has just been out there for 30 years, just going around having different adventures. She, she's like, she's caring enough to where she would want to help this planet by doing like an arranged marriage, even though she doesn't really have to be there. Like it just kind of like lightened her up a little bit. It just made her feel like less militant overall, which is kind of all she was in her previous appearances.
It gave her the princess vibe, right? Especially with like the plate that they kept showing with her marriage, the portrait on and stuff like that. And even though she's not obviously the princess type, they gave her like, oh, you're fish out of water on this planet.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to sing. You don't want to be the lovey-dovey person, but you did it because you wanted to help them at the end of the day.
And I understand what they were going for, where the villain was targeting, I guess, locations or planets that Captain Marvel had a relationship with, but it felt like a little kind of like hat on a hat. Like, if you're really trying to like save your planet and your society and the people that you rule over, I feel like you be indiscriminate about where you're stealing your air and water and sun from. Like, don't try to get the strongest hero in the galaxy wrapped up in your scheme, right? So like I get it. It's an interesting way to pull in your hero, but tactically, I'm just like, there's got to be a lot of other planets, with water and air that you could easily have stolen it from,
Yeah, well, I'd even done it to prove it worked first, probably, before I just kind of guessed, hey, is this going to work kind of deal? Because, like, they got the one bangle, and they're like, well, we need both to make it work. And she's like, the hell with it, I'm going to try it. So I absolutely, but also, this is something, there's a cameo in this with Valkyrie momentarily, which is nice. Because Marvel has something against refugees in all of their properties, Mike. No matter what you're looking at, they love to
popping up. Yeah,
they love to attack and kill and make refugees the bad people, and no matter what you're watching. But like we have
they're making it seems like they'll make the refugees whatever they need to be for the story. Because I would say they're just as equally like just like cannon fodder for the villain, depending on like what story you're in.
Yeah, right. I think Captain America, you got this, you got everything else kind of going on. Quantum Mania had quantum refugees, right? Like they're killing refugees all over the place. But the point of it is like, this is in space with the warp points. Obviously, are you drawing attention of the Guardian? I know this is after buying the timeline book. I think this is set in 2025. So are you drawing the attention of the Guardians of the Galaxy, who I would have wanted to see more than I would have wanted to see Tessa Thompson's Asgard person, or having literally Thor proper show up because he's out in the world or out in the universe.
That is a really good point. I mean, and also, so I think I think the overall story between the characters and their struggles are really effective in this movie.
Yeah.
But I think all of the trappings around them are kind of what pull their narrative down a little bit, because you do start talking about these things where it makes me think back to Secret Invasion of just like, okay, we've seen the galaxy, and just also if you're just even know a little bit about astronomy, right? There's planets all over the place in any galaxy. It's like not limitless, but like it's a lot. Like, I mean, way more than anyone can count in a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it is hard to believe, like, oh, is there really not a planet that really anyone can go to?
Yeah.
Like, and the little area that they go to when I think the first act, when they're trying to do that peace treaty that goes wrong, like we only really kind of see like a part of a city. I suppose they could have occupied more of the planet.
I don't think they were. I think that was just like a splinter cell of scrolls that they were able to like, hey, we have a little setup on this planet because. Yeah.
But I was like, what is that? Like a couple thousand curry or scrolls. Like, I feel like you could like pick them up and just like take them to like an intergalactic hotel somewhere. You know, it just seems like space is not the issue.
Well, and they're like, we have nowhere to go. I'm like, well, you probably have other places to go. This didn't seem like it was a very well thought out place to be. Like you found a valley. Like maybe the movie Prometheus was filming like two valleys over. It kind of looked like so.
Yeah, it does just kind of feel like, oh, if we could just get like
some reasonings.
Give a writer maybe a little bit more time and
and they could have
compassion. They could tell like maybe a better story with the kind of refugee angle.
They probably could have. It might even be filmed, Mike. It could have been one of the cut things too, right? Because literally, it's like a comic book. Comic books don't really give you a lot of reason, but like it just jumps into it, right? It's like boom, like you're getting into it. We're not exploring that scroll encampment or whatever the refugee place. It literally just starts with the meeting between Darbin and the leader, and then everybody shows up. So I appreciate the brevity of it, right? I don't need to go see it, but like it still was that was a really good moment for Miss Marvel to see like being a superhero is not always about saving everybody at the end of the day. And I thought that was a very poignant lesson for her in using Captain Marvel and like, hey, save who we can, and then she's like, she's like, you weren't wrong, but we had to do what we had to do, kind of deal. So
and also like it led to one of those like sweeter moments where it's just like, oh, I'm sorry the way I talked to you back there. It's just like, oh, that is actually like really nice. Like that is like kind of how you foster a relationship between, people that are just trying to make a connection of just like, well, yeah, that was like a really tough situation. But like now that you're on the other side of it, like, yeah, apologies all around. It was tough. I was like, oh, this is nice. It's just like, feels like, it's like
the conversation points like actually pay off where like, instead of like, hey, we have an entire movie because we didn't talk about it instead of, so yeah.
But I feel like I don't know exactly if I want to lump this into like the technical trappings of this, but there's 4 things that I feel like really overcomplicated the movie overall, which
he's not counting, folks. He is not counting. There are 4.
I have 4 fingers. So first of all, the switching. The switching might have been the most effective of the things, but as I said, there were moments where I didn't quite understand it. At first, I thought it was whenever they used their powers, but then they would switch and then they would use their powers effectively for like a couple punches or a couple blasts. And then I thought like, oh, is it just when they use their right hand? Because I thought there was like a gesture, like a very clear gesture in one scene where they're looking at the right hand. But then it just kind of felt like, oh, it was just if they went turbo power too hard. Because they never really clearly said. And then
they do.
Even if it is the right hand, which, okay, that's fine. I don't understand specifically why it's the
They
right
literally
hand.
said if you use our powers at the same time, that's what causes the swaps. That's the whole montage, because when they hold up the right hand, like if 2 of us or 3 of us use our powers at the exact same time, that causes a swap between them. And that was a training montage in the ship where they were all using their powers at the same time.
I did like the training montage. I still enjoyed it either way. But even during the training montage, I was not entirely sure.
They said
how
that
the
they were like, because at first they were like, we're going to test it, and they're like, okay, it happens when we use our powers at the same time. But if you use it and you continue to use your power, like it doesn't swap if it's already on, like a light switch is. If it turns it on, you can keep using it. But that's why the switching happened if they use them at the exact same time. And that's why they were like, that's why at I believe on, I don't know the planet's name, the singing planet. They were like, Miss Marvel, don't use your powers. The 2 military people are going to do it real fast. So just stay here and use your new fighting sash instead.
Gotcha. Which is that sash like comic book accurate? It felt like a reference.
She does have a sash in there. I don't know if it's a fighting sash, but she does have a big sash in the comic book. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that leads me into my.
Okay, cleared up 1. 3 left. Let's go.
3-1. So the second one is there's like the technical breakdown where is it Captain or General Rambo? I want to get it right because she was very
she's Captain. I'm pretty sure it's Captain Rambo.
Captain Rambo was just like
Lieutenant Trouble.
We're all entangled because we all have light-based powers. I was like, okay, wait a minute. I'm not necessarily saying this is like retconning, but this is just like we need these 3 characters to have a common denominator. So let's just say they're light powers, because I don't think I would look at Captain Marvel and say her powers are light based.
That would be
say her powers are from the Tesseract, and that has nothing to do with light, in my opinion.
Yeah, so they've not really touched on that. I just don't think she's had enough screen time to touch on her powers, right? Since she really just didn't touch on it in her movie, didn't touch on the other 2. I would say that's probably, I agree with you, that's like the least explained one. But the other 2, I feel explained in their shows what their light-based powers are.
It makes a little bit more sense.
And I agree with you. That is the most different ones. But now we know that her powers are light-based, kind of like a Superman, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, maybe. So and I do kind of appreciate how like twice they reinforce that Captain Rambeau got her powers from a witch hex, because whenever you say that, it's just so ridiculous. But they let you know that they know it's ridiculous, right? They acknowledge it, that this is kind of silly, so we're not going to shy away from it, but it actually happened. So that leads me into the next thing that's slightly rated is the Bengals.
Okay.
Now these Bengals are, I don't like these MacGuffins very much. I think there could be an interesting connection with them and the Ten Rings later on in the series, because they're like these kind of like quantum things. I don't really know exactly what
the Ten Rings have the most things, but at least we now know what the bands are, and we have a base point to work with them.
And they also like defined the hammer as well. Apparently the hammer is special in some way.
Well, the universal weapon. So I would say they already established that in Guardians 1 whenever Ronan put the Power Stone in his universal weapon hammer.
But like they never really established that the hammer was like this special defined object. I just assumed that you could put that Power Stone in anything and it would just make it more powerful.
Yeah. I would, and that's probably just a pickup from that. So that didn't bother me too much about the hammer, because he literally just shoved a Power Stone, something more powerful than these Bengals in the first one.
So I was really hoping that, since we knew that we were kind of missing a Bengal. Did we know we were missing a Bengal in Miss Marvel?
Because they said they needed 2. I think the villains did in that one.
Yeah, so I was kind of hoping that there would be a little bit more to do when Kamala finally got both of them. I thought like she was gonna grow super big, or do like some sort of really big light power thing, just something really grandiose. And I was kind of waiting for that. I was like, oh, we have these 2 Bengals. The villain gets them together and she destroys herself. But now once a hero who understands how they work gets them, what's going to happen? And I feel like we didn't quite get the payoff of it,
The Bengals don't power Miss Marvel. I think we should just I think we established that. Maybe it was before the show. The Bengals do not power Miss Marvel. She's a mutant with light-based powers, essentially.
If the Bengals don't power Miss Marvel, then I'm just going to go ahead and call an audible and say we don't need Bengals at all.
I think the only reason she wears it is for her grandma. I think because she said, how many times did she say that in the movie? Her grandma gave it to her. I think that's the only reason she keeps it, is because it's an heirloom from her grandma.
And it just makes it a little confusing, right? Because even in her own show, when she had the Bengals, I mean, she puts the Bengals on and then she gets powers. I mean, I get it. It's a very comic booky thing to say, like, oh, the Bengals like
activated
ignited.
Her extreme,
It's just like, that's like saying like, oh, well, my wife always had diabetes but didn't get it until she got the flu when she was 12 years old, right? It's just like, we don't need like these extra steps for these things to enlighten. So I just feel like the Bengals overall,
so at the end though, I will say she only walked off the ship with 1, so I don't think she's going to have both going forward.
Yeah, I was looking for that, and I saw Captain Marvel was wearing the second one, and like at kind of like the farmhouse at the end. So
I don't think we're gonna have to worry about those, at least for a little bit. But it is exciting to know that they explained how the space portals were made. I do enjoy that. That was cool.
That was gonna be my 4th thing, and I kind of love it and hate it a little bit. I love it because I am really into the idea of kind of Earth coming into its own in the galaxy, right? They're quickly like becoming like a destination within the galaxy. So, when a city gets big enough, you got to give them an exit off the freeway, right? So that kind of what it starts to feel like to me. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And they tried to kind of set up the rules for how these things work. I guess it was the Bengals that created the highway exits.
They're quantum bands. So here's the part I think everyone is glossing over. Quantum bands, quantum mania, quantum. These are probably relics from the Kang War, like the original Kang War that Loki talks about, like the Loki show. Like these are probably Kang items or Kang variant items. The 10 rings, and my guess there's probably something else that we haven't come across yet that are going to be crucial to defeating people with time and space things, because these are time and space Bengals, right? So what I think this is setting up, I would say, kind of like an Infinity Stone for later, that we don't have to worry about for a little bit. So I think they're time and space. So you use the Bengals, create the space portals, and you can travel through space, kind of thing. So yes.
Yeah, I think just like I would have wished they could have like put some of these other things to the side make the narrative a little less complicated. And honestly, I think the space highways are really interesting, and I would have loved to lean into them a little bit more because they are very integral to the villain's plan. Like if these didn't exist, she couldn't destroy like single planets in a single swoop. So I thought it would have been interesting if, like, maybe, because we haven't talked about Nick Fury yet in this movie, and weirdly enough, he's like almost comedic relief for most of it.
This is the Nick Fury I wanted,
which is I'm okay with. It's not that big of a deal. Like, I am fine with him just like chasing kittens around. That's hilarious to me, especially since the other one ripped his eye out. I thought he would maybe have been a little bit more apprehensive about the whole situation.
He never seemed mad about it in the first movie either. So,
But I almost wish there was a scene where like maybe Fury was not at necessarily like a galactic council somewhere, but it's just like him like petitioning for like this like quantum jump or something, because it's just all of a sudden there in front of Earth, and they're monitoring it, trying to make sure it's not weird.
They had quantum jumps. They did all that with Infinity War or Endgame. Whenever Thanos did the thing on Earth, they've been able to travel in and out of Earth for forever.
Oh, that was not clear.
Guardians used it as well, especially in the holiday special.
I remember them existing. Yeah. Yes, I do remember them existing across the universe. Yeah. But Earth was always this isolated little blue marble that didn't even know aliens existed. Yeah. So I was kind of hoping once they got these kind of quantum jumps, there was almost like, oh, you've made it. Now this galactic counselor or whatever has recognized you.
One of the bands that made the portals was there, so I would expect there to be a portal there.
Yeah, I need a little bit more follow up on this. Like, now all of a sudden Earth can go anywhere in the galaxy from these jumps. I just want to know.
But they've been able to since Infinity War. So like I don't think we need an explanation again.
I want explanation.
7 years later for what
on my desk. This is a big. I care about infrastructure.
This is
all I care
fine.
about.
Honestly, I'm surprised that there's not more other species monitoring this. Right, like we only saw the Earth. Was it the Saber station? Why did we not see other? Maybe a Nova Corps,
or more aliens like on Earth. Like, if there's a highway exit, why aren't we seeing more like aliens show up?
Secret Invasion, while they do not reference it at all in this, I think has set aliens on a bad course for Earth because of the Skrull thing. I don't think
we don't stop at Earth. They're not kind of.
We roll up the windows and lock the doors when we pass Earth, kind of thing. I would say there's probably not a lot more on Earth that we're not going to get a lot more on Earth because of that xenophobia kind of thing from that. But Nick Fury, despite seeing him in Secret Invasion, which is not touched on at all in this, which is good because I wouldn't have wanted them to. To be completely honest, we got the Nick Fury that I know and appreciate, right? Not the one who's like sitting down on trains yelling at people, or whatever, going into what was it, his coffins. So yeah, I like this Nick Fury. The scene early on when they first get their powers and they're fighting the two Kree the two Kree that keep porting with everybody, right? I thought that was fun, where he's like, obviously he shoots them and they're fighting them in those things. I thought it was fun. I thought the Flurkin eggs were something else. I didn't know what they were early on. I didn't have a clear vibe on the Flurkin eggs.
So I'm actually surprised that you didn't pick up on it right away, only because were all of those like floating kittens in that most recent trailer that I didn't watch?
The first trailer, and this is a scene that has all the Flurkins running down steps on the singing planet. So that scene never made it in here. So I thought the Flurkin eggs were gonna come up like they were gonna be something on that planet, like get the people off of the planet.
Oh, interesting. Maybe that is a classic like Feige bait and switch.
Yeah,
where we don't know.
And it could also be something like where do these kittens live? The Flurkins live within us. Maybe they transport the Flurkins to that planet to live. When
the Flurkins ended up back at Earth and they were basically like, I don't know, running around New York City, I was just like, you might want to get those. Those, you don't just want those dudes running around. But
they are going to scratch up all your furniture. Kittens are not to be trusted.
But that was clever. Like, it almost kind of felt like when when you're watching like a TV show, like Nick Fury was the B storyline of just like, I gotta assume that the 8-foot people that he works with are Asgardians. Is that kind of
someone thought he was an Asgardian. There are some some Skrulls, some other aliens probably in there, but they thought it was an Asgardian.
So I like all of that. So that was that was fun. It was lighthearted. It was
and they
silly.
played the Cats song from the musical Cats over it while the Flurkins were chasing everybody down.
Is that what it was from?
Yeah.
I wasn't familiar with it, but I thought the juxtaposition of the song with what I was watching was really funny.
Absolutely. Again, this is our yearly reminder to release the butthole cut of Cats, please. Thank you.
AI is just going to make it for us, so we don't have to worry.
Yeah.
Sooner or later. But I mean, I thought it was effective, fun problem solving. I always love interesting problem solving in movies because that's always the thing that at the very end of the day, the writer has to really dive in and get creative, right? We need them to escape this space station. How are they going to do it? 1,000 ways that you could do it and explain it very easily.
And
right?
here are your pieces on the table. What pieces do you have to play with? And they were like, well, the Flurkins had the, I guess, pocket universes or whatever inside of them to make them bigger. Yeah. I'm like, oh, let's use that then.
And they were smart in the beginning of the movie to establish that Goose can ingest people and then spit them back out because she spits them back out in
Kree in the house.
In Kamala's house, and it makes that, which is just really funny. Like, I mean, you're sucked in by a cat, and all of a sudden you're in a house in New Jersey, so... I'm just going to start swinging my staff because I'm not where I'm supposed to be, and this does not seem right.
And it kind of showed, like, if they can't use their powers because of the switching, like, it does make two Kree people, Kree warriors, kind of, I wouldn't say, like, for Captain Marvel, no, but, like, Captain Rainbow and Miss Marvel, like, actual, like, kind of hard to take down, right? Like, they're like, these aliens are not, like, these are war-based aliens, they're not going to be easy to do, so there was that. This is a very refreshing. This is a very refreshing movie, Mike. I needed something like to kind of get off my chest.
That's what I was just about to say. I feel like sometimes we go into these, at least recently, these Marvel reviews, and we're an hour into the conversation, and I start to dislike the movie more. Like, talking about it just makes me angrier, where this seems to be doing the opposite. So I feel like that is a success in and of itself.
So let's go. We haven't talked about the end credit scene here.
That's what I was about to say. We haven't even talked about maybe the more viral thing.
Let's talk about the first one, the one's part of the movie. Which I actually had rumors of, but didn't know. We kind of touched on the show. Is Kamala starting a Young Avengers, if you will, or whatever.
I mean, I'm 20. What'd she say?
I'm 23. Yeah, she's like, I'm really 23.
Like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I got this tablet in my couch.
So again, Iman Vellani, really stealing show. Haley Steinfeld again as Kate Bishop, fantastic, right? Like, two of my favorite new additions to the MCU, bantering back and forth. He also mentions Cassie Lang. I don't know if that was written well before, maybe Ant-Man, but that does it. I would also say there's the other people we could also think about is Hulk's son from She-Hulk, and possibly the Scarlet Witch's kids if they bring them into the main universe.
That's true. And I mean, I feel like the character of Peter Parker in the MCU, especially after No Way Home, has kind of emotionally aged outside of the Young Avengers, right? Maybe when he was like in his second movie, he still could have fit, but he's been through the ringer. Like, he is an adult now. Like, you've gone through a lot.
I wouldn't want to put him in there anyway. I think you need the people with, like, a little less training than he has.
You could
he trained with the Avengers.
Throw in America Chavez.
Possibly. Yeah, that's right. America Chavez. Yeah, that was the other one I was thinking of. I was like, there's got to be somebody else, but we never got Nova. We never got what I can think of. But yeah, absolutely. So there's that one. I think that's that's part of the movie. That's great. That's fun, right? Little tease towards something bigger finally.
And also, it sets up an interesting dynamic because I never really considered Miss Marvel kind of being the Nick Fury of it, and I loved that reveal where she was kind of mimicking how he kind of he would be lurking in a chair in the shadows. So I think it makes sense because she is the most, like, nerdy. She would be the one that kind of wants to make her own Avengers because she's the fangirl. The weight and the crown that you have to wear of organizing a group, I could see would make her, like, have to grow up and mature quickly because there's a lot on the line. It's not, being a hero. I could see a storyline where, like, being a hero is not all fun and sunshine like you think it is. Like,
and they kind of set that up a little bit in this one too for her. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's fun. I think it was a great one. But I think let's talk about the bigger one. Yeah. This is the one I'd heard, and how it was pitched to me was they will bring other universes into this movie. Well, technically yes, but they didn't bleed into the movie. So, like, that's what I talked about the other day. Like, this movie sets up something bigger, other universes. Well, guess what? We get the return of Kelsey Grammer himself, Mike, as Beast from
not
X-Men 3.
Not himself.
Yeah, right.
I think more his voice.
Yeah, it's his voice and his face. Obviously scanned for this, but like it is the true Beast from like was it the Joss Whedon run of X-Men, right? Kind of thing. Like he's bigger, he's furrier. It's not X3 Kelsey Grammer or was it Days of Future Past Kelsey Grammer. Mm-hmm. So, but it was fun to hear him. He's coming off the back of his Frasier reboot. Like this is a month for Kelsey Grammer fans, but it was fun to see it. And then also, I thought it was a really good piece of acting when actually was Teyonah Parris seeing her Maria Rambeau there beside her, like when she woke up.
What character is she supposed to be playing?
So there's a character called Binary. And Binary was a clone or robot version of Captain Marvel in the comic books who worked with the X-Men. So she has essentially similar powers to Captain Marvel. And as you can see, this version had the bangles on as well. I don't know if you noticed that there at the end when she was.
No, I didn't notice.
She had both bangles on because I was looking at the outfit. I'm like, ooh, did they get comic?
Yeah.
Now
I'm googling a Binary.
Binary, yeah. So it's gonna be a hot one. But you can kind of see the outfit, obviously red, white. It's got the little star in the front. She's got a little kind of flame hair, a little bit. But she worked with the X-Men. But like, I honestly, I didn't think Captain Rainbow was dead at the end of this, right when she closed the portal. And I don't think this is the end. We'll see of Teyonah Parris. But it's interesting. She went into a parallel universe where they mentioned obviously Charles Xavier. They have Beast, and then they had the Binary version as well.
We are going to get thick, and I mean thick, Chris, into a discussion of multiverses and timelines here in, I would say, roughly about an hour when we start talking about Loki at the end of the news episode.
Yep.
Because I really want to dive into it and pull it apart. So,
well, that's not what they're doing, but that's fine.
Yeah. So it's like, so maybe we save a lot of that conversation for then. But yeah, because I have like thousands of questions, right? She was floating in space. How did they save her? Was there a space safe Quinjet, or I guess what do they call it? The
X-Jet.
What's X-Jet? But it has like a different name to it, doesn't it?
It's a Blackbird.
Blackbird, that's what it was. Like, was the Blackbird up there? Is this supposed to be the Bryan Singer X-Men? Is this another?
It's not. So I will tell you. I will tell you. This is not the Earth 838, where actually Maria Rambeau was the actual Captain Marvel from Doctor Strange. This is also not the Fox universe. This is another one, as what they've said as well. So this is another parallel universe, if you will, where obviously we've never seen Maria Rambeau, we've never seen this version of Beast, but still, I would say of all the characters you could pull from the X-Men, Beast was a bold choice, but probably a really, really good one to get people talking about this.
Yeah, and also he had to deliver very scientific explanations, which sounds very smart coming out of his character and Kelsey Grammer's voice.
Yeah,
and I do like visually how they constructed a tear in the universe. Right, when they had to close it together, they used that kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-sided. Was it 6-sided shape?
Hexagonal.
Yeah, to kind of close off the rip. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
The only thing that was like a little confusing towards the end, and this is again a lot of different mechanics driving the car of this movie, which makes it kind of hard to follow. When I saw that, when she disintegrated herself with the bangles, right, and a hole ripped open in space. I did not assume it was another universe. Right. I assumed it was every other portal that the audience was taught throughout the movie. I was like, we're looking at like her home planet or something, or we're looking at another side of the universe, another side of the galaxy. Like I didn't think it was another dimension. And then so that meant I think was it Captain Rambeau that delivered that line of just like, she tore a hope in that. That's another dimension
because her power set lets her see the other.
Yeah, and I was just like, did everyone in the MCU just get like a memo? Like, once things started happening like crazy in the multiverse, which is like, just a heads up, everybody, we're having multiversal things happening. kind of in our sector of the galaxy. So if you see a tear in space, don't just assume it's a quantum jump. It could be another dimension.
Yeah, but they set up obviously Captain Rainbow to know these kinds of things, and they kind of touched on her stuff a little bit in WandaVision as well. I mean, I know it's like a reality thing, but they did touch multiversal stuff in there. So I coming from her, it was smart. But the point of that, not that I have to explain it to you, but like she overloaded the energy with the bands combined with Captain Marvel's blast is what overloaded the Bengals punching a hole through rather than a normal portal, which would have been created if Captain Marvel didn't punch her with all that energy or blast.
I mean, I guess that does kind of lean into this interesting theory that you did lay out of like these kind of quantum weapons, if you will, or devices could be things left over from Kang, because we do know Kang has that technological prowess, and we'll talk a little bit about that more in our Loki season 2 review.
Yeah, and the Kang kingdom, I guess, in Ant-Man had the same symbols as the Bengals and the 10 rings too, a little bit. So I think the 10 rings and the Bengals will be our MacGuffins, but we're going to be waiting a while before we get anything from any of this. But, anyway, I thought it was I thought that again my whole point of this is Beast is a very unique visually X-Men character who's distinctly recognizable as soon as you see him, and to have an actor of the caliber of Kelsey Grammer, who's off of his new reboot, who did play the character before, I thought that was a really good choice to say, hey, here's X-Men without bringing in Patrick Stewart again to play Charles Xavier or Wolverine. So
yeah, I would assume if we see this version of Beast again, visually maybe slightly off. I basically knew it was a CG character right away.
I would say the whole movie visually impressive, right? You mentioned that earlier. I think this is like a last minute thing because I didn't want this to get out.
Well, and we've known this also historically, that these post credit scenes are almost always different crews, units. I believe totally different directors. I don't think the director of any of the films handle any of the post credit scenes in any way. It's like a totally different team and department.
Yes.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but that means there are going to be incongruencies with like budget and timing and secrecy and everything.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, they are probably. I mean, my guess is probably I only heard about this like 2 weeks ago, and I would say they probably started maybe filming it 3 weeks ago, right? Or did it. So I maybe when the home version comes out, we'll see a better version. But I'd also compare it to Eternals, right? When we had Pip the Troll, voiced by Patton Oswalt, very, very low res post-credit scene because they probably didn't film it or do anything until the end of that. So to me, it doesn't take away from the movie. But I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a really, really fun character to bring in. But
I do have to say, just overall, I am pretty surprised that we're here, recommending the Marvels overall. We had a good time, especially just kind of coming off of the other properties that this has kind of touched. I wasn't too jazzed about the first Captain Marvel movie. I was overall positive about Miss Marvel's show. I definitely loved the character more than I would say the show overall. So it was a mixed bag going into it, but I feel like it worked out really, really well, especially since the Marvel hype machine wasn't really getting me too excited. But yeah, this is a easy recommend for me. And weirdly enough, I'd like to see more of this crew, this dynamic,
Yeah, I think obviously I don't think bad reviews are going to get this. It's a positive. It's not rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, right? I think the user score is like 85%. I don't think it's bad word of mouth, but I don't know if it's the marketing. I don't know if it's the economy. I don't know how many factors are driving the numbers down, but I don't think this will get the money it needs. But I agree. If you get a chance to watch it, even if it's on Disney Plus in a few months, it's well worth the watch. This is not something I would say you have to watch, even though maybe, but like it was really fun. And I think easy recommend, I think, for anybody who wants to see it. So anything else, Mike, before we get out of here?
No, I think it's time that we dive into our news.
We're going to go dive into another multiverse. So we'll do that. But so people want to know what you're up to, what you're doing, where they can find you at, buddy.
Yeah, they can find my webcomics at liferewardsrisk.com. Chris, if people want to find you, where are you?
You can find me on Instagram, Faldan87, VALDAN, or Video Game Systems of the same name. If people know more about the show, listen to our regularly weekly news episodes, or maybe our upcoming review of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Where can they find all of them goodies at?
Oh, all you got to do is head on over to superheroslate.com. Take the next exit on your galactic superhighway, because our website has no pop-ups, no annoying ads. You don't have to worry about anything getting in your way from checking out our awesome upcoming release calendar. We got a lot of date shifting, and we're going to talk about that in our news episode here shortly. So that calendar is extremely helpful for all of that. And you can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you love listening to fine podcasts like our own. We love hearing from you, and we love our super fans. So if you want to be a super fan of this show, very easy to do. All you got to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be here every week, folks.
That's right. We'll see you next week.
Bye.